provider is still there's no quality control. They sell you on this high speed internet, and you don't get the goods. That's starting to sound really familiar. You know, um, Welcome back, everybody. It's hilarious. You think that you're getting the goods. You pay all this money for the high speed internet, and then they don't necessarily deliver on what they promised they would. And that feels a lot like the car space to this these days, isn't it? The car industry, the car quality that we've seen today is not quite the same. Um, be the change. Thanks for that, and I appreciate you dropping in. And I apologize if you had any hangups or glitches. You were trying to get in earlier. Anybody who was trying to get in earlier, this one hopefully is a little more stable. This internet line. I'm using my phone, so this should suffice, and this is fine. It's actually a beautiful day out today, so we're gonna sit back and just enjoy the weather. So thanks for joining in, and I appreciate you stopping in. And we want to kind of address the quality issues, the modern day cars. I mean, where's the quality gone? I kind of did a little check here recently. I did a little research. I've got a video actually coming out on Thursday where I'm talking about the 5 worst car brands for problems based on about 300,000 vehicles that were surveyed by Consumers Reports. They came up with a list of the 5 worst major brands and the quality issues that they're putting out these days. And I think there's a lot more than that. I mean, clearly we know that there's lots going on in the industry with problems and recalls and catastrophic failures, and there's no shortage of issues around and around. But there is a reality, and the reality is it feels like ever since 2020, 21, it certainly feels as though the quality of modern day vehicles isn't quite what it used to be, or the expectation. It feels like a lot of buyers seem to be more okay, or we've sort of almost accepted, I think, as a culture that it's okay to have a few problems. We've got warranty, there's recalls, there's all these things and these processes to protect us. But that, in fact, isn't always the total truth from what I've seen. The processes and the systems like recalls and NHTSA and warranties, sure, it's there as a backdrop, but I've come from the engineering background. And if you properly engineer and design something on the front end, you shouldn't necessarily have to rely on your last course of protection, your last line of defense, if you will. Like recalls or warranties are things that we take for granted, and we assume that they're there when we need them, but unfortunately they're not always there. And the quality of the modern day car is not amazing, if we're being honest. At least what I've seen, we're not seeing a whole lot of improvements of the quality. And again, since 2020, 21, most people feel that there's been a marked improvement or lack of improvement, gone the other way, that some of the quality of new vehicles have gone down drastically. I mean, I'll give you a classic example. I was just perusing recalls today, and there's a recall again for Ford. I mean, we know that they've had these alleged there's lawsuits, there's a lot of recalls. They're leading the recalls. They're pretty much the recall king in Ford. But why? Why is that? Well, there's more to it than just, okay, yeah, they're leading recalls. But the latest one is a 2020, 21, 22, and I think 23 for Ford Escapes and the Ford small Broncos, the baby Broncos, the Mexican-built ones. Those two vehicles, which share the same common engine. Yeah, it's that little 1.5 liter 3-cylinder engine that Ford puts out. First of all, why would anybody buy a vehicle with 3 cylinders? That's my first question, because we've heard the problems with the EcoSport and a 3-cylinder engine, and even worse, we're hearing it's got that drive belt that drives oil through the pump, of course, to lubricate the engine, but it uses a belt. Any normal, relatively decent, conventional quality vehicle uses a set of gears and interlocking gears that drives that oil through the system. But in these engines, they're using a belt, and so the belt's known to fail. And of course, then it doesn't lubricate, and next thing you know, you're running a dry engine, and of course, what do you think? So Ford's had some problems, the EcoBoost engines, lots of troubles there in general, eating oil and antifreeze, turbos, cam phasers, all kinds of problems there. But this latest one with the junior Bronco, the baby Bronco, and the Escape is that recall for that fuel leaks. Well, were we talking about this last year? This is actually kind of funny because we were in fact talking about this last year, and I've brought it up time and time again. The recalls when they came out last year was essentially saying that there was a problem with a cracked fuel injector. The fuel injectors were known to split. If they did, they'd puke oil or gas on the ground. And of course, it's a flame hazard, fire hazard. Well, nobody wants a fire hazard on their hands. But that was something that was kind of common, and it was a high probability. But Ford said what they were going to do was they were going to put some sort of a trough to redirect the fuel, so if it were to drip out, that it would run it off and ventilate it somewhere else, like allegedly on the ground, and then use some programming in the ECU or ECM that would say, look, if it detected a pressure drop in the system, that it would shut off the car. Okay, that's twofold bad. Number one, could you imagine driving a vehicle that just shuts off? Jimmy Hat says, are you a UA welder? Actually, that's hilarious. Good call on that. It is definitely a hoodie from the brand. Nope, I'm not. I don't. But I have family that is in the hall, so that works for that group. I am not. I'm actually electrical by trade, but I get all the swag here, so life's great that way. But I'm glad you asked there, Jimmy. And so what Ford's doing is programming the ECU. So it detects a pressure drop in the fuel system, and then what does it do? Shuts off the car. Well, you're driving at speed, the thing shuts off. That sounds like a tragedy. So that's not good. But on top of it, they're using programming. They're not actually fixing a potential for a cracked injector. Jimmy Hat, hey, cool. Right on. So yeah, I'm assuming there, Jimmy, you are a member. Which one? Which local? UA. Ali says, no, I guess I wouldn't be in that case. Nope. And this whole quality thing, it just kind of chokes me up, if we're being honest. Because I'm just at a point where, we're assuming that the cars are going to be safe and good to go. 488, nice. Right on. 100%. Shout out 488 in Edmonton. So, it feels like just about every car brand seems to be struggling right now. And I don't know, where does this end? It feels to me like there was some major, in my opinion, only in my opinion, because I don't have the direct proof, other than the fact that every vehicle that I'm seeing and I'm hearing people driving newer vehicles are having more glitches, more problems, more quality controls, shortages, shortcomings, plastics. I mean, it feels like there's a lot of shortage, cutting corners and with fittings and materials and plastics and parts and electronic tech failures and things like that. It definitely feels like a lot of problems. So, Mohammed says, how is new Nissan Armada? The new Armada, I'm going to reserve judgment on that one because the older Armada wasn't bad, although I've heard of a few with engine issues with their larger engine. I think it was the 5.6 V8, but now they're with a turbo V6. So time will tell on the Armada and the Infiniti QX80. Time will tell. They look great. I can't say one way or the other whether they're a great product or not. I mean, what my history tells me, what I've seen with Nissan and Infiniti, their weakness is largely in their CVTs. That, of course, would not have a CVT transmission. So chances are you're probably going to be okay. But again, it's a new model. You're taking a big risk. Some of their smaller Turbo 3s with their variable compression, quality, yeah, no, I'm good. So yeah, stay tuned on that. I don't have enough information. We haven't seen it be around long enough. The Nissan plastic oil pan, laugh out loud. Yeah, but a lot of these brands are doing that now. Plastic oil pans everywhere. It's what? They try to justify it in saving weight. It's recyclable, or it's renewable, it's saving weight, is better for performance and fuel efficiency. No, it's cost savings. We all know that, right? We all know that these guys are all tell us one thing. If there's one thing we've learned from the last 9 years in Canada, or certainly certain places all over this globe, that There's things that are told to us, and then there's things that are reality. And in this case, when I'm hearing about plastic oil pans, I think to me there's nothing positive about it other than it saves the organization some money. Not a Coloni Ed said hi. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. And Saucy Anthony says, would you consider the Mercedes E-Class a decently reliable sedan? I would say generally not as much these days. If you went back to the previous generation, probably a little bit more so. But it feels like almost every Mercedes has something. Now you've got these blown engines in the C-Class, these Renault-derived engines that are blowing pistons. Before that, you had naturally aspirated V6s. Those weren't bad, but if you go far enough back, you get timing chain problems and cam tower, cam housing leaks and problems and shuffling heads on their 6.2s. And it feels like sort of they're all over the map. Many people believe that your best bet is to start with an E-Class in terms of overall solidity. And I would agree with that. Mercedes, I think the higher up the food chain, the more solid the vehicle feels, but of course, the more tech and the more expense. So that's sort of the trade-off. We have Darnell Overton says, Traverse is garbage. I totally agree. I was at the car show actually on the weekend in Edmonton, and I saw they had the latest and greatest, and I thought, this isn't a bad value. It was like, I think it was in the mid-30s. I think the spec I saw was around 40K. And I'm like, that's not cheap, but you know what? It has lots of space. It's comfortable. It seems like a nice tech. It actually a good mid-sized SUV. And then I look at the specs and say, yeah, it's the Turbo 3. No, I'm good. I'm out. So that's an issue. Not a Cologne Ed says, my 22 Ram Longhorn has been reliable so far, 21,000 miles. And that's good to hear. I really do. I'm glad to hear that. Are you talking the Hemi 5.7 in that one? The older V8s certainly were pretty reliable. There's that Hemi tick thing they talk about all the time, right? So that's a bit of a challenge to watch out. Not too much idle time. Don't idle those too long because they can start to develop that ticking and knocking noise with time. Darnell says, yeah, exactly. Turbo 3. Yeah, see, I'm good. Like, I'm at a point where if I don't want to look at a car with a 3-cylinder engine, I just don't. I'm sorry. Call me, whatever. Call me this, that, or the other. You know what? I was there at the car show, and they had the little Mitsubishi. I think it was, I don't know if it was a Mirage or what it was. It was the little putt-putt, the tiny little guy that they had in the showroom. But it was at the car show. And I was looking at it, I'm like, well, this is pretty cheap and pretty easy. What if you just needed something cheap and dirty to get to work and back? Well, it seemed like a great idea, right? But then I started talking to the guy who was representing the brand, and I said, can you get this with a stick? Because it was only a 3-cylinder engine. And he said, well, no, it comes with a CVT. But he said, it's not Nissan's CVT. They've derived their own because of the problems Nissan was having with Jatco, so they created their own. Well, that's neither here nor there. If you're trying to drive a little putt-putt like that, naturally aspirated 3-cylinder like a Mitsu, it's at least got to have a manual gearbox. But in these SUVs, and even the full-size Atlas with a big-sized SUV like that with a turbo 4-cylinder is just not enough. There's not enough engine there. You definitely need a minimum $500. What is this? Good evening from still cold and icy Ottawa. Hey, good evening. What else do we have? BMW stopped making, what do you say? Their engine made of plastic would be the best company. Yeah, absolutely. You just get back to brass tacks with what works. You know what I mean? Some Bronco Sports have 3 cylinders. Yes, they do. And that's the ones that are the problems. The 4 cylinders are less of an issue. We have iBridge says, if BMW stopped making the engines of plastic, they would be the best company. Yeah, that's a big part of it, yes. They have other issues too. Their gearboxes aren't a problem. Their cooling systems and their snap-together fittings need work too. But yeah, they're getting better with the B48 and B58. Darnell says, all CVTs garbage, and it depends on how you drive them. Yeah, they're too sensitive, but the eCVTs in Toyota are actually better. They've got that the strong first formal gear, so it can tolerate the torque. So Toyota actually has a better system. What else do we have? I'm driving a 14 Compass manual trans. It's rock solid. Yeah, again, and even with a manual, you can sort of regulate. And a lot of these weaknesses come in the gearboxes. So if you have a manual, you're good. We have Andromeda says, I love the EA 888. in my GTI, but it's way too small for the Atlas. I miss the VR6. Totally, right? And that's what, that's what I'm saying. Those totally need to have the VR6. The VR6 went away. How about this? What if they had a VR6 and threw a supercharger on it? How would that be both fun and a little bit more durable? I had a VR6 back in a Passat years ago. I love that thing. But yeah, turbo, the EA888 is fine for ripabout, GTIs, or even in, the RS3s and the Audis and things like that. It's a small car. But yeah, it doesn't deserve to be in an SUV of that size and magnitude. Most people don't change their CVT fluid at 100%. That is a problem. And the more frequent you do those changes, I've heard a lot of people that say the more frequent you do the oil services on those, the more reliable they tend to be. Barry Spruill says, laugh out loud, 23 Jeep Grand Cherokee Summit, 30,000 miles, and fuel pump failure. Oh, fuel pump. Afterwards, airbags, crashed on the shop again. By the way, it's not mine. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Stellantis, what do you say, right? At least, hey, they started using ZF8 speed, so there's some improvement, but, you'll tip them. Then they went with more that other bus system. The electrics are getting a little better, but electrics have always been a nemesis. Leaks, quality, fit and finish, parts, you name it. Saucy Anthony says, would you consider the Acura TLX better than the ILX? I think they're both great choices. Totally different car. 3 Series, 5 Series, that sort of thing. I would consider either or, to be honest. Acuras, now they're not really doing much of the V6 either, unless you go into the MDX and that. But these little Turbo 2s, or Turbo 4s, they're not the worst thing. It's not the best. We know Honda's had some of the 1.5 issues, but they've hopefully, stuck it out and made some improvements. Jimmy Hatt says, my Jeep is a World motor. There you go, yeah. So, and I noticed you mentioned earlier, and sorry, the comments are ripping through, but yeah, the Hemi 5.7. So yeah, just, again, if you're driving a Ram with the 5.7, the last of the outgoing before they went into the Hurricane, be sure to make sure you don't spend a lot of time idling. Start it up, let it idle down, and set off. Drive it gently and gingerly till it warms up. But don't spend too much idling. It's like even modern day diesels. A lot of people used to idle them for hours, but now with the EGRs and DPFs and all of that, they just plug right off. So it's best just to, most modern engines, warm them up, idle down, and then take off gently. Darnell says, I'll stick with my 2000 Lincoln Town Car with 265,000 and just deal with the minor problems. Totally, right? And that's kind of where I'm at with my Ram too. Just stick with what works, and that's kind of where I'm at with that. And if it works, it keeps running, I'm just going to keep running it. So, and then we have Andromeda says, my coworker loves his Jeep, but it's old enough to have hand crank windows. I love that. I love crank windows. What's wrong with crank windows, right? It's old school, but it's simple. And the less of those power features, the better off we're going to be. FYI, you're in Canada, MotoMaster Sin Gold Bottle have a sale for $24.99 on clearance. There you go. Thanks for the heads up. But that's definitely good to hear that we need deals here. Certainly in Canada, we overpay for a lot of stuff. It's funny when I talk about, the cost of some of the servicing. I mentioned about, like, say, an oil change for our cars, and we'll take our Toyota and it's $130 at the dealer. People are like, wow, that's so expensive. What? That's cheap in our space. We were paying $250, $300 for an oil change on the BMW, and I think it's even gone up even more. I don't know why it costs that. Well, it's not worth that, but it's what they charge us. But when you're paying $10, $12 for a quart of oil, and it takes, 6 or 7 liters in some of these premium vehicles, plus an $80 filter, plus their labor, nobody here is doing it for free in Canada, that's for sure. Jimmy Hatt says, Civics and Accords look awesome. Yeah, I would agree. I like the Hondas too. The Accord would have been nice if they stuck with the Sport and the manual and that turbo 2-liter instead of going kind of more of the hybrid and smaller engine. I kind of liked what they did just before they switched it up, but yeah, absolutely. Tim Pauly says, hello, hey, how you doing? Great to have you here. Vladimir says, hello from Seattle. E90 2007 and 11 have how many miles can they last with proper maintenance? They can on the naturally aspirated cars. No, with the N55s or N54s. The turbos, they generally won't last. But that's my opinion. I mean, you can make anything last, but it's going to cost a fortune just to keep it on the road, and you're going to start getting shy about driving it because it's just it becomes a real maintenance pit. The turbo cars, especially the N55. Um, Severin Lawrence says older tech is best. I'll keep my 18 A5 supercharged, 45K miles, and only wear and tear tires, and fluids are so good. Honda and Toyota Forever by Tim Pauly. You know what? Great point. And I'm not on this bandwagon of hating on new vehicles. I think there's some amazing new vehicles, absolutely amazing. And a lot of you would attest to that. This is not a new car bashing channel. This is a channel addressing the cost, the maintenance, reliability, depreciation. We want a practical car that's fun to drive. That's ultimately it, right? Have it's fun. If it's breaking down, it's not fun. If you're having fun and with the wind through your hair and it's cheap and it's affordable and it's quick and peppy and handles nice, that's fun and that's worthwhile. Okay, so in my opinion, cars like the new Mazda 3, you can still go to the manual gearbox, front wheel drive, 2.5 NA or turbo with the all-wheel drive. That's a fun car. Same with the CX-50, same with the CX-5, same with the CX-30. Those are great cars, and I'll definitely advocate for those all day long. Mazda build great vehicles. The Miata, the MX-5, great vehicles. Toyota still has some fun cars. Supra, even though it's a BMW, great cars. GR Corolla, fairly good cars. There's been a couple engine blow-ups, but for the most part, there are a lot of great cars out there still these days. So this isn't about, me getting, tough on these new brands. It's just that it feels like 2020 and 2021 rolled around, and for the sake of the bottom line and the stakeholders, shareholders, a lot of these corporations and these car companies decide to start cutting corners and doing things a little on the cheap and not really, in my opinion, taking the time for the quality control. By the way, on Thursday, I'm releasing a video of the 5 worst brands that customers are complaining based on consumers' reports. I put the list together, the 5 worst manufacturers right now in 2025. If you're worried about that, if you're worried about buying a new car in 25, there are some great cars, but there's 5 that historically up to 24 and now carried into 25 have a serious history of problems. So you're going to want to check out that video. So come back certainly on Thursday. I'm going to tell you more about those brands. So we have Arunta E says, do you think the new cheaper Toyota EV will be a winner? I heard Ford is going to follow soon. I don't know about Toyota and EVs. I mean, last I heard, they're kind of talking about these solid state batteries, and they're going to develop that and enhance that. But there seems to be all over the map. Yeah, I heard they might have that small little truck that might be EV. I mean, time will tell on that. We're hearing certain other channels talk about that a little bit more or have mentioned it. Some of these are other markets. Some of these are not being built. Some of them are just kind of chat for now. I'll believe it when I see it. But right now, Toyota's focused on hybrids pretty much only. And I talked to a local general manager here at a local Toyota dealership, and he told me pretty much by 26 Toyota's all hybrid. There's not going to be an available NA engine. And of course, hybrid. And then, of course, they're messing around with hydrogen. So that's kind of what their space looks like. Andromeda says, Jimmy, it's because they have less profit margin on small cars. I want a basic Dodge Dakota with a new inline 6, 35K. Why don't they give us affordable small trucks? Yeah, and then of course Andromeda says, yeah, it's because they're less margin. And that's totally right. That's what they were doing in the last few years. See, there was a time when that mattered, building those different price point vehicles, having, the appropriate amount of margin in every level, whether it's that $15,000 car, $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 car. Thanks, Ahmed. I really do appreciate that. That is awesome. So much appreciated. Yeah, and those price points certainly are something that they all were worried about. But they also realized during the shortages during this last, back in 2021, that they weren't making the money on the cheap cars. They had to wait for the chips. They had to wait for the chips to become available. So while they were waiting, they were putting it in vehicles that they could make more money on. Well, what were those? The high trim vehicles, the ones that were loaded up with options. Because if they sold a low trim level cheap vehicle with bare minimum margins, they weren't making profits. So they learned, hey, we're on to something. So then, of course, they started cutting corners, in my opinion, starting trimming back. reducing the quality, in my opinion, as well, from what I've seen in recent years. And as well, on top of it, they even started at the dealer level, started ordering vehicles, lower trims, loading them up with a bunch of localized junk like paint protection film, bigger wheels, floor mats, roof racks, floor mats, all weather, everything, you name it. Loaded it up and then said, look, here's this vehicle. It's on the lot. It's for sale. You said, no, I don't want that. Well, you had to wait for 8 months to get one that didn't have that, or you could buy that one and pay them the extra $3,500. And that's what they were doing. They were playing greasy pool. Yeah, so really appreciate it again, Ahmad. I really do. Jimmy Hat, you know what? You guys, all of you, I really do appreciate the support on the channel. And yeah, honestly, we're living the dream. We truly are. I'm glad I'm able to talk about cars because I've learned this stuff. I've lived and breathed. I've wrenched on cars. I've sold cars. I've worked for Toyota dealers. I've worked at a local auto auction. It was a closed auction for dealers only, for Ford lease returns, buybacks, and those. So I've worked in the background. I've worked in the car business for years, and now I'm just living the dream and hoping to share a lot with you guys out there. So my experiences, plus I love it and live it and breathe it and read it and eat it, and you know it. So I'm hoping that I'm able to share a little bit with you guys. Ahmed, so we appreciate your content, bro. No, I do appreciate that, Ahmed. You know what? It does mean a lot because I'd like to believe I'm providing value. And I'm not here, trying to chase the ultimate dollar. There's channels that are certainly focused on, trying to rally in certain ways and be strategic in that way. I mean, I don't have a full-time job now, so, this is sort of a little bit of a side job for me now. I got punted out of my last corporate game. So since then, I've sort of made this more of my kind of full-time job, but more in a way of because I like to express and talk about this and allows me to talk even more about cars, which I love in the first place. I love these things. So Dr. Agjita says, you are informative channel, dude. Keep it up. I really appreciate that too. And Jimmy Hat says, what's the odds of factory direct purchases? Well, I would say that's a tricky one. We know Ford was really pushing, the vendors were pushing back. Actually, competitions doesn't seem to be all that much more reliable either. Sorry, you were talking about the Ram. Competition, yes. I know everybody's beating on Stellantis, and it's kind of hilarious because it's like Ford and GM seem to be hiding in the wings, but they're no better. They've got GMs in the L87 blowing up engines, main bearings, rod bearings, Toyota and main bearings, Chevy and their transmissions, Ford, they've got their host of issues too. I mean, we go on and on. So yeah, there's no shortage of issues on any of these vehicles. But as far as direct purchasing, that's going to be a challenge because we know OEMs were talking about it, but each individual franchise, remember, they own those dealerships separately, and that would pretty much destroy them. Now, granted, most of their business comes from service and parts, but that's still a leg of their business. And if you took that away from the individual franchise dealers, that's a significant hit to any one of them. And they're not going to go down kicking and screaming. So it's going to be a tough uphill battle. I could see maybe eventually at some point, but interim, I don't know. Like even the Scout, we heard about that and the challenges, with Volkswagen trying to go direct to customers. And there's going to be a lot of pushback from each of the franchise dealerships you watch. There's going to be some hardships along that space. Andromeda says, Jeremy, in Canada, they're still playing the mandatory accessories game with new cars. Absolutely, they are. By law, you can't mark up new car MSRPs, so this is their loophole. Totally. That's exactly how they're rocking and rolling, and it's just clearly not. It's dirty pool, but that's really the only way legally they can sort of get away with that. Arunta 5 says, GM gone in Australia. Even police cars now, Hyundai and Highway Patrol. And PM cars, BMW. General Motors, I mean, they're using Fords right now for most of the police. They're using more, even also Durangos, the Dodges. But at some level, they're going to start getting onto the fact that, wait a minute, these things are junk or they're not that reliable. Not like they used to be. Remember the old Crown Vics and Chevy Caprices? Those things were rock solid. Rock solid. So we probably won't see that kind of quality reliability again. Jeremy Martin says, dealers just mark up every car here in the U.S. for no good reason and call it market adjustment. Normal cars too. Yeah, they do. They are. They're totally doing that. And And they're doing other dirty pools. So they're doing it at the dealer level. But again, talking to more general managers here, what like Toyota, for example, if you looked at the older outgoing 3.7 V6 in the Forerunner, the one that just left back in 2023, I think it was last year. Well, the SR5 would have sunroof and leather, and it would be pretty loaded up, heated seats and steering wheel. But guess what? That's all gone. Now the SR5 gives you basically fabric, and plastic everywhere. You get heated seats, but no steering wheel, and there's no other features. There's no sunroof. It's basic. So what they're doing is they're still giving you that model line for similar pricing, but now they stripped options. So if you want that level of options, you've got to level up, and now I start paying for limited dollars to get an SR5 spec. So they're all playing greasy games. That's at the OEM level. And then the dealers are doing these add-ons and extras and market adjustments and all these other greasy efforts to try to, to try to make more money. They're all trying to make more money, and we're all trying to save more money. But something's got to break here sooner or later. And like I said, I'm not a hater of new cars. I think there's a lot of new cars I would really be interested in buying. I was down at the car show here on the weekend in Edmonton, and there was quite a few there that really kind of tweaked me. When you look at value proposition, there's a few in there that jumped out at me. But what isn't the value proposition? Hey, Mario, how's it going there, buddy? I don't know if you saw this morning, Mario. I saw you driving there on 130. Where the hell was it? You were heading westbound on 137th? And I looked over, gave you a honk, but you were like pulling gears in the little hot rod there. So, hey, Mario. Good to see you. I looked over. I was the guy driving that crusty old Ram, driving beside you there anyway. FYI, it was funny. But I was at the car show, and I saw the new GMC. So I went and looked at the Denali HD 3500 single rear wheel. And but it was the AT4X, which means it had the extra all-wheel drive, not all-wheel drive, 4x4, beefier all-terrain tires, beefier suspension. Would you believe this? This is stock. This isn't dealer add-ons. This was, as far as I could make out the OEM pricing, they had the sticker price, $150,000. This is still considered a light-duty truck. I mean, it's a 3500 diesel HD Denali, but really, 150 grand. Mario, hey, always rushing. Yeah, I hear that. You betcha. Arunta says GM and Ford made special models for police. Yeah, they did. Yeah, they always have the hot engines and that. So, but Jimmy Hat, I'm from Castle Downs. Grew up all over the north and north side. Mom worked at Don Cherry's Lounge on 137. Nice. Well, great to hear from another local boy there. Hey, Jimmy, hope everything's doing good. As you can look outside, we finally got some sun out here. The snow's gone. We don't have snow anymore on the ground. It's pretty nice. So it's nice to see that the snow's all gone, and it's starting pretty much to get warmer out here. It's still a little chilly, but at least it's decent out here. Barry Schmitz, Barry Spruill. Sorry, I got all this kind of background in my screen here. 150K, not my watch. Yeah, no, that's not on my watch either. I looked at that and I'm just like, are you kidding me? And the funniest thing, the guy that comes up to me to start talking me up and chatting me up, he looked like they profile us, right? I walk in there like this. They're going to look at me like this guy's a bum. He can't afford to buy this. But that's okay. I prefer to dress down when I go car shopping. It kind of speaks volumes to the integrity and the quality of the sales of a lot of the dealerships. But this guy comes up to me and he basically he looks like the Palm Springs special, just got off the golf course in his Cadillac Escalade. And he was really talking up the brand, and he basically saying that what they're doing is, he said the consumers have asked for this. He basically pointed and poked in the eye, and he said, look, it's the consumers. They want the features. They want the options. They want the extras. Over generations, they ask, we deliver. They want this, that, and the other, we deliver. Eventually, prices got to go up. All this extra tech, it costs money, it goes up. Yeah, but it doesn't, the idea of still not making lower trim vehicles affordable, that's not what we asked for. You can still find crank-up windows and rubber floor mat trucks, but they're still $35,000, $40,000. So that's not affordable. So, what this guy's saying, in my opinion, was a little bit of noise, but I'd take it, to each their own, I guess. I wonder if the Canadian dude got his car from the U.S. He had the 40K tariff. Yeah. Well, that whole tariff conversation. Yeah, it's not really hitting Canadians so much at this point, from what I can tell, other than the fact that some of the Canadian workers that are building some of these Canadian cars are there's some layoffs. You probably heard General Motors is laying off, I think it was like 400 or 500 workers here coming up. And I know I've known a couple people who actually work for the brand down east. Pretty devastating, but it's been like that. Stellantis has been laying off left, right, and center. They just laid off 900 last week, and this has been going around and around for some time. It's just this whole car market with, it's not just, it's tariffs, but it's not, it's everything. The car market in general is getting leaner and meaner, and they're turfing people left, right, and center. So, but in doing so, hence the quality feels like it's sliding too a little bit. Um, let's just see here. One of my reasonably close neighbors has a V8 Mustang, nice car. 67 Mustang and many others in storage. Biggest house in the street. Yeah, I mean, there's people that have a lot of fun toys. They're buried in the garages, and sometimes you don't know until that door opens up on that sunny day. Um, Let me just see here. What else we got here? Jeremy Jeremy Martin says, my life would be much easier if I could drive normal cars, but we only live once. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I agree. Like I wish I didn't have a passion for these fun cars, but I do. And unfortunately it kind of pushes me to places and buying kind of expensive cars sometimes because I enjoy driving. If I wasn't a car guy, trust me, I'd be saving a lot of money along the way. But that's, my daily driver. I don't need something too crazy for a daily. I think that's just money out the window. But I do enjoy and I do prioritize fun driving. I really do. I do believe that if you like driving, have that fun car. And maybe you can only afford the one, so it is your daily driving. Maybe it's a B58 powered 340 and that's your dream car and you can drive it in the winter and the summer and that's great. Or maybe you have enough money for a beater and then you drive that in the winter and then out in the summertime comes your M4. Whatever it is. I mean, we all have those things. So, and I agree. Barry Sproul, life is too short to drive boring cars. You got me on that one. That's 100%. And I truly stand by that. So it's nice to have a beater for when you're heading to the mall or just doing a run to the grocery store so you're not worried about your car getting dinged out in the parking lot. But trust me, I need to have that fun car. And I've always had a fun car in the garage. So Ahmed says, car enthusiasm is an expensive hobby that we all enjoy. I totally agree. It is an expensive hobby. We do like it. And you know what? If that's the only thing that if that's what we spend it on, so be it. Some people like golfing. Some people like traveling. Some people like whatever it is they do. Maybe they, sail kites or, build craft projects. I don't know, woodworking, you name it. Everybody has their thing. And for me, it's cars. And a lot of you guys, it's cars too. So you know what? You can't take the cars. You can take the cars out of, no, anyway, it's a long story. But anyway, I agree. Jeremy, I have just got my dream car. F90 M. Wow, that's a hot rod. I've always loved watching your channel and all the E60 M5 content. Jeremy, great on you. The F90, wow, great choice on that. I don't know if you saw my review over on 6 Speed Reviews. I did review it. That was from a few years ago when the car first came out. I just put it on that channel, so you'll notice I'm a little bit younger there. But it's a spectacular car. The F90 is. I think they sort of hit that. That was the pinnacle. Pinnacle for performance / driving, because now the latest generation is just big and heavy and disconnected, and the F90 I think is the sweet spot. But yeah, great choice. I like the 2015 Lexus with the 3.5. Yeah, great engines. I do too. Do you think cars are going to sell well regardless of? Oh, kind of lost that one. Invest first, folks. I did it during COVID. Only regrets, I should have started in my teens. Always got to prioritize the bottom line, and that's affordability. And I agree with that. Affordability. Like they say, you never want to live in your car, although there's a lot of that going on these days. But yes, prioritize life, a roof over your head, food in your mouth, prioritize that. Andromeda says, nice one, Jeremy, you betcha. Arunta says, worrying about damage to new and expensive vehicles is a big problem. You didn't have to have with older ones, and also service is not so expensive on high tech. Exactly. You know, having an older car that's, an older, a 2012 Civic, like one of our cars that we have here, you don't worry about it, right? The maintenance is cheap. You don't worry about where you park it. You can park it on the street, and I mean, it's just there's a sense of a peace of mind driving like something like that. But still, it's nice to have that toy that's racy and fun, and all of that for people that are car drivers. FLA 70 says, I bought one clean with 40,000 miles for 20K with towing package. Right on. No, there's a ton of great options out there, new and used. And like I said, you know what? I'm I'm never going to knock new or used, because as a true car nut, as a true gearhead like I am and like a lot of you are, there is a preference. We like to pull gears. We like manual gearboxes, DCTs, powerful engines. A lot of times it's naturally aspirated and all those things. We like those things, but we can also appreciate performance in other forms. And that's why I'm looking at some of these hybrid Ferraris, and even Porsche 911 now is a hybrid in one of their, I think, the GTS. And so, like where you're adding performance for the sake of, adding some of this little bit of this tech to double down on performance, I think can be a good thing. The Corvette E-Ray is another example of throw a little tech in there, you really double down on the performance. So there are cases where it really adds to the fun factor and the excitement. But getting that sound, that rumble in the back in the seat, and I mean, those are almost critical. The sounds, the feeling, the excitement on a naturally aspirated engine is just wonderful. Andromeda says, I was born too late to buy a new Golf R32. Unlucky. Yeah, well, there's always options out there. Uh, why do you think new Corvettes are crashing? FLA 20 or 70, sorry. I think it's a lot of performance, and it would be drivers that maybe are getting into cars, high performance cars, that maybe they weren't previous so much, because it's brought in, I think, a broader spectrum of buyers. And so I think there's just people maybe not used to it, and they have a lot of performance. People get sometimes overzealous, turn off traction control, and then Bob's your uncle. Yeah, Arunta 5 says, newer vehicles are so high tech, you really need to visit a dealer, as local service does not have diagnostic equipment. Yeah, that is a factor. Barry Sproul says, my 2013 Honda Accord Sport has over 200,000 and still looks amazing. They push instead of oversteer. Skippy's on the VR4 regarding the Corvettes. Yeah, and you'll find that typically with a car that is mid-engine or rear engine, they'll typically have that phenomenon where they're a little bit more understeer, and they'll fall out with a snap oversteer. So they'll tend to, if you push hard into the corner, you'll find the understeer a little bit, and then if you get overzealous, you can find it quickly push it out, and all of a sudden the back end loses it. And a mid-engine car is actually a little harder to control once it's out of control. Like it's higher limits, but then once it loses it, it's harder to get it back. Andromeda says, at least in Canada, you can still find specialized mechanics for European brands who do great work for less dollars than dealers. You know what? Those people are going away, though. There are some of those. I know there's a local guy here that works on BMWs, and I ended up talking to him, and I priced out some work for the M5, and I ended up finding that his prices were in line or higher than the dealer. It's bizarre. It's because they become, the known, a specialist in that space for that specialty car, and then they start charging accordingly. So I truly think some of those guys get cocky. At least in Canada, in Edmonton, you don't get some of those that are real good value. At least, I mean, once they figure it out, they start charging, I mean, even if their shop rates are $50 an hour less, then they charge an extra half hour on the end of the bill, is what I've found. I've seen that. So there are some of those great small shops, but I've found, on the contrary, there's some of those other exceptions too. So, but yeah, ultimately, there are some good quality cars, but I do think the quality's sliding. I think there's more plastics, valve pan, pan gaskets, more plastic under the hood, plastic next to turbos, more turbos, direct injection, more carbon fouling, more maintenance required. Extended oil service intervals are not good. Of course, vehicles like Ford and manufacturers, in my opinion, they're getting away with BS, in my opinion, by putting in a software patch to protect from a mechanical failure like a cracked injector. That's bung to me. I'm good. I'm out. I'm not buying a 3-cylinder trash anything from that. Yeah, time to take care of the older cars. How much longer do we have to wait for your reveal? Mario, it's over. I'm revealing it. I've revealed it over on the you might have to swing by or something sometime. I know where we're all at. Um, but I've revealed it on my in the membership group, and now I want kind of give the members an exclusive look. And I've already started. I did a live stream last week where I did a quick kind of flip up the cover on it, and so I revealed it. And I'm going to get into more of that. So if you want to be a member, if you want to have a little special emoji, if you want me to answer some of your very specialized questions, I will do that too. That's what membership gets, some extra privileges. I know I've answered some great questions in great detail for some members already recently. I'm also sharing what's going on the side. So, yeah, see, look at that. Andromeda says, come join the members. Even my 2015 Cruise is worth more money now. Everything's worth more money on the used car market. Everything seems to be going up because prices of new seem to be just skyrocketing. So, but you know what, everybody, I really appreciate it. I got to get going. Time to go grab some groceries before I get my schwanz chewed out. It's time to hit the road. And you know what, we got to eat here. It's dinner time pretty soon, so I'm going to go grab some groceries. I really thank every one of you for supporting the channel, for coming out and being part of this program. It really is so inspiring. And you all have a wonderful week, everybody. And maybe I'll drop another live stream coming up here real soon. Andromeda, thanks. Take care. You as well. Get some grub bub. Barry Spruill, you betcha. Time to grab some eats. Peace, Mark Ahmed, you bet. Thanks so much again. Vinny says, yo, I appreciate your efforts in all the videos, man. Have a wonderful evening. Car makers have their priorities straight. Yes, all of you. Thanks so much, every one of you. And you have a wonderful afternoon and a week. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.